Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and today we are taking a look at and getting on with the build of this HB Racing D8 World Spec WS. Now this is part 4, and today we are going to get the front clip or the front suspension module onto the chassis. I'm going to get some more of that built. Last time you saw me, I think I was just marrying up the gearbox cases and I polished the hinge pins. So since then I just assembled one part of the suspension to get that all going, and then the other side, because I know that it's a bit monotonous watching every part of the build, but it's been together really nice. You know, it's falling under its own weight, which is a really good sign for a really fresh build. Even if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. These things break in and run in heaps. But yeah, I'm really impressed with this new WS front end. Pretty extreme geometry on here. I'm really impressed with it. So it's definitely going to, you know, definitely over the old car, the D8 19RS, it's definitely going to drive better in the air with that aggressive. So we've got 22.5 degrees of caster on the front, which was, you know, the old car had 17, and then the steering block, we've got 6 degrees. And the old car had 2, so with standard parts. Now you could fit up to 4 degrees steering blocks, but you couldn't get any more than that because you had problems with the drive shaft clearance. But that's why they've in fact created this new reverse C-hub to allow the more aggressive geometry. So yeah, so really cool. So that is the front end, I'm loving it. Also with the World Spec, we've also got the pill block now on the B block. So the A block remains the same, it's the same part. The B block used to be one-piece machined. I mean, this is one-piece machined, but you used to have to buy different ones to get different kick up. Whereas with this B block here, you can put the different pills in to get your kick up that way. So it made it cheaper to race it and adjust it. Doesn't really change the geometry at all, just gives you a little bit more or different way of actually tuning it. So yeah, it's really easy then just to rebuild it and put new pills in it, rather than once your suspension block wears to, or you know, to actually buy new suspension blocks. So yeah, so really cool. All right, so that is the front end. So that is, what step is that in the book? That is back here. So let's get this married up and into the chassis. Then we can put on the sway bar and get it going there. All right, so here's my chassis part. Sit the front end on. Now I know that this car, I'm a bit reluctant to put the O-rings into the outdrives on the diff. I'm just going to leave them floating until at least the car's broken in, because I don't want it to bind the drive shafts. That said, there is an awful lot of play there in these drive shafts. So I might go ahead and, what's it saying here for the drive shafts? Put one in the diff end. Sorry, I'm just reading through. There is a lot of float in the drive shaft. I am going to put the O-rings in. Maybe I won't put them in the rear unit. I think the rear unit will flex more. So just sit it in here. That'll act as a little harmonic stopper as well. Perfect. I love the way the chassis just so positively goes into, the front suspension goes into the chassis. Okay, that's going to fit there. Last thing I'm going to do now is absolutely going to lube up this gearbox. I don't always pays, especially on a new build, to definitely lubricate it. Got my, where did I put my gizmo tool? I can't see the forest for the trees. Always away when you're coming back to build. Here you go. My 9 steps gizmo tool here. And I'm just going to lube up this front gearbox. You really only need to cover about 1/3 of the teeth to give yourself a nice... I can't believe how well that it's actually seated from a new build. I've got a sneaking suspicion that this new World Spec has actually got new materials for the gearbox cases. I can't confirm that, but they definitely feel a little bit different to the older outgoing car. A little bit more glass, a bit stiffer. Just the way it's all snapping together, a little bit more positive. So go ahead now, put the O-ring in, put this on the chassis, click, and we are on. Go ahead, put the front bumper bar in. Now, like I said, I do prefer to tap these threads normally in the gearbox. Fortunately, I don't have that luxury available to me at the moment. But I did put a tiny little bit of the lithium grease onto the screw just to help it get started. These, like I said, these plastics are notoriously tight. Let it go. Just bear with me while I get this one started. Now I'm dropping this out, making this very awkward for myself. Always on camera, of course. In and locate. There we go, positively lock it into the chassis. Then hold it with one hand. Get this one started. And these 9 steps tools really are more than up to the job getting this one built. Now, like I said, some people will use power tools for their whole build. Definitely not my favourite way to build a car. Yes, it can save some time. It can also do some damage. Now I'm just bringing the screws down just so they're all nice and seated, doing them up all evenly. Just putting a little bit of grease on there, like 3 threads worth. Just making sure as I go along that everything's seated and spinning nice. Get the front bumper bar in, which just locates in the front there on the A block. It's important not to put too much grease onto these screws for assembly wise, because it can in fact hydraulic lock being blind screw holes. But like I said, just the tip, just like 3 threads worth, and then just wipe it off as you go. But after you've done it the first time, it should be much easier to rebuild. Not as good as tapping the thread, definitely not, but you need a M4 tap for that. But just take your time. Big beefy threads for sure. Getting them all pulled down. And then I'll actually loosen it. Half a turn, reseat it and retorque it. Like so. Might give it a bit of a wipe off. Nan's favourite tea towel. Okay, just going to loosen it half a turn. Definitely really nice plastics. Okay, and then go ahead and retighten and get it all positioned, making sure that gearbox is sitting nice on the chassis. Working across the face of the gearbox. Last one, back to the first one. Perfect. That's all you need. Beautiful. Front gearbox is on. Now we can get to work on the steering. Let's go back to the instructions. So, it's telling me to do the sway bar. So I've got the sway bar here. It's a 2.2 mil on the D8 World Spec. Now I've seen a lot of people try and use power tools on these little fittings here. These do not have to be tight. These are a 2 or 2.5 mil screw. These do not have to be tight. Well, I mean, not tight, but they don't have to be stripped. So, little, tiny little screws. So I usually put the clamps on, get it all located, and then I will offer the grub screw into it. If you put the grub screw into the bracket first, that's why you can get it stripped, because you're not actually doing the bracket up. Just like so. These will not rattle loose. And then we can go ahead and put the sway bar. Oh no, I don't put the sway bar in the arm yet. We'll just get it located into the arm. But it's at this point now that I can actually do up the free play or the float for this front sway bar. And this is a simple adjustment where I just do it up all the way. And again, not tight. They can see that little bit of, I can do this on zoom. You can see that this little bit of movement here. Just tighten that down until it's gone away like that. On this side too, you can see I've got that movement. That has gone away. Still there. And then I'll go back to the other side and loosen it off a 1/16. Loosen this one off a 1/16. There we are. And it's nice and smooth, falling under its own weight, not flopping around. And that's exactly what we want. So it's nice and smooth sway bar, falling under its own weight and not excessively sloppy. You can just feel there's a slight knock on the left hand side. The right hand side's a little bit tighter. Just getting that, just do it by feel. You just want like a thou. There we go. Nice smooth sway bar action. Beautiful. We can get that located. All right, sway bar located. Now we can get on to the steering part. Beautifully machined parts here from HB. So we've got the steering and the buckets. So the first thing we've got to do is orientate ourselves, making sure I don't in fact assemble it wrong. So the orientation for the steering, it's got the 5 dots on it. Sorry, the 4 dots. Got our nuts, our bolts that come up from underneath. Very clever geometry here. Super strong as well. Get this one started. This one too. Something I like about HB is actually the hardware. So the screws and nuts and fixtures and fittings are really, really nice. I've actually gone as far as to use them on other cars. The HB spare parts, the screws are really good quality. Really hard wearing. Because you'll find on other inferior cars that the screws are actually made of a cheaper material, so they won't actually be as good. Can't put the torque into them, the nylocks don't lock as well. HB ones are beautiful. Get everything lined up and sitting nice before we apply the correct torque. Doesn't need to be crazy. Like so. Beautiful. We'll go ahead now and position our caster block. We've got our buckets here. They're going to go in. Go in from the top. And this one goes in from the bottom. It's very important now, we've got 2 different colour hinge pins. Put the longer one in the top, put the shorter black one in the bottom, because you can actually change these buckets here, this shim height, to adjust your axle height within the carrier. Another clever little geometry change. And HB have taken the liberty of applying thread lock onto your grub screw. See the thread lock? Perfect. So as long as you're not screwing it in and out, it should be perfect for your application. Start the thread. Like so. And this one. Now I'm just pushing the pins in, making sure that they're locating, because they are machined to fit the grub screw, making sure that the grub screw is locking into place, like so. Then I can go ahead and put my axle on. I'll put my hex on, pin in, now one thing I do love about my 9 steps wheel wrench, if I can find it, here it is it's actually hollow, so it's really good, and I like to do it because it can put that over your hex and that holds in your wheel pin nice and central, and then you can put your grub screw in. And this grub screw here does lock into the pin. Now I don't find using Loctite's really very necessary. Neither's completely locking it up. I mean, it has to be nipped up, but you don't need to go crazy tight. The wheel does hold the pin in anyway, but you just don't want it to fall out at times of service. Look at that, beautiful front end. Now it's as simple as putting in the hinge pin into the arm, and we have ourselves the front suspension. Now you notice I didn't polish the hinge pin here, and that's because it actually come really well finished. So I do take a little bit of precaution and use an arm reamer just to make sure that there's no swarf or flashing inside that. And the beautiful thing about this is it actually does up to the shoulder of the hinge pin. So then I can go ahead and put in my camber link like so. Go the third hole up. Another nylock in here. Gonna go for long camber links on the front of this one. Then it's gonna have quite an aggressive driver who needs quite a supple car. So we're gonna go for long front camber link. But given the higher traction, we've got quite a high roll center set in. Yeah, good. Looks like we've got ourselves the front end of a buggy. There we go. A beautiful front end. Beautiful gearbox. Going to the center diff now. We are looking good. Things are really starting to take shape. Got our camber links on. We can put our top shock mounts on. Gonna go for second hole laying down. Give it a bit more of a progressive feel for the driver, knowing full well that he can just stand it up really easy if the track evolves. 2.5mm Allen key. Beautiful shock standoffs too. 7075 machined aluminium, hard anodized. So strong and I suppose low friction onto the top of the shock bush, and very strong. These things need to take an absolute battering. Okay, got this one. We are looking good. Okay, that is that part all done. Now these screws here, these must be for the sway bar. Just going over that, yes they are. And the sway bar doesn't, just looking at my setup sheet here in the instruction book, because it's got multiple holes, I'd say we'll start in the middle. I like that they've put new adjustable holes. Where are they? Just flicking through the book to find my setup sheet. Here it is. And sway bar hole on the front. It is in fact, yes, middle hole. Middle hole for the sway bar. So you've got a selection of 3. So really nice little easy adjustment there to do sway bars. Depending on how rough the track is or how much traction your car's developing or how much you want it to develop. I don't think it's an option that enough people play with sway bars, they're really quick to overlook them. I tend to find that most people have seem to have like a too stiff a sway bar. It's particularly in Australia, a lot of our tracks are not the highest traction, have a too stiff a sway bar and too softer springs. So if you soften up the sway bar and put firmer springs on, it'll usually jump and behave a lot more consistently than the other way around. But what would I know? Here we go, middle hole. But they give 3 holes of adjustment there and a full, again you can use the same sway bars as the previous model car. So if you are stepping up to a World Spec, it's really good that you can utilise the same parts. There we go. Look at that. Falling under its own weight, no problem. All together, really robust. That is what the front of an 8 scale buggy should look like. Beautiful. Okay, next bag, bag G. G bag. On G, we've got this far. What am I going to find here in the G bag? G2, G3, a load of hardware and shim. G1. Revised for World Spec is this new Ackerman plate, and I believe it's utilised off the Truggy, the Evo 8, sorry, the D8T Evo 3 is the model designation of the truck. Now before I get started on this, I'd just like to get a flathead screwdriver, if I've got one available. Looks like I don't, that I'll have to go see Nan, is I use my hobby knife, because it of course does everything, and open up, clean out this thread for a start, and open up this gap here in the servo saver. And I'm going to get my screw in here. I'm just going to seat this thread, make sure this thread's nice. A lot of people with HBs have troubles here. So if you just do a little bit of dummy assembly, which is easy for me to say because I'm a dummy, it should make it just that little bit easier. So put that there. Going to check the thread. Very fine thread on these servo savers. Couldn't be better though. Again, these servo saver tubes, these steering tubes, are again made of the best aluminium and hard anodized. Super lightweight, super strong. Steering post as well. Unbelievable the length that HB have gone to give us, you'd think a big heavy buggy, but they absolutely soup up every part they can. Okay, so steering tube number 1. Then we've got our aluminium arm and our steering bush arm, like so. That's going to locate in the bottom of the, like so, the servo saver tube. The arm's going to go like this, 90 degrees out the side. The spring, if you can, you take your multifunction tool and preload it. Just give it a bit of a work, help the spring seat, and just put the tiniest smear of grease around the top. And what that's going to do is in fact help it all go together really, really nicely. Like so. Now let's see if it's going to make are full of me. Haven't done this on camera for quite a while. So just unwind it until it goes click and wind it up. There we go. You shouldn't need any special tools or anything like that. It's an extremely tight servo saver spring. And I just like to do it so there's about 2 threads. Let's have a look. There's about 2 threads showing. Might go another one. I'm going to be using good servos with this. And then it's at this point now that you put the lock and collar spring on. And again, it doesn't have to be crazy tight. What we're going to do is nip it up to make sure that doesn't come loose. Like so. Little pinch screw there. And I cannot wind that up or unwind that anymore. Now the last bit I have to do is actually cut this, because I've tightened up the servo saver spring, cut this little foam thing. If you're running on a clean track, you don't necessarily need this part. Just cutting it here with my 9 steps blunt knife. You could use scissors or something, I suppose. Like so. There we go. And then we'll slip that over, and that just saves dirt and muck getting into your servo saver assembly and causing it to bind or not sit true. Let's get that foam located all nice, which I haven't, of course. Perfect. Got it sitting there all nice. Looking good. It's got a little twist in it. I'm just fussing about trying to get the twist out of it. There we go. Perfect. And that's how you build a servo saver with not a whole heap of fuss or mess. Now we do have these alloy collars, and these locate in here. Now I am going to put Loctite on these bushes. I don't want these bushes to drop out or think about dropping out. Set this up under here. Like so. And they will locate onto the Ackerman arm. I've got these beautiful little machined slots in there, and you can feel when it's located. It's just a matter of getting it there. And that's going to help the whole assembly stay really positive and together. Okay, got my 3x12mm screw here. Just making sure I've got it located. I'm actually going to unwind it a little bit, and then it positively clicks in, and then I wind it all the way up. Beautiful, and that is so strong. You can get aftermarket ones, and I have used in my previous builds of these, of HB cars. You can get ball raced units, but unless you're prepared to really maintain it and look after it, I find the OEM one, the one that comes in the kit, actually a better proposition for most people. Because if you're just going to spray simple green and compressed air everywhere, all you're going to do is destroy those little bearings before you've realised, and do yourself some mischief. There we go, get it located. Double check it, then we can tighten it up. And it is our servo saver and steering rack for the HB. Beautiful. Now I can go ahead now and we'll get these into the chassis. Oops, get my 2.5mm here. These are nice 4mm screws. And again, these locate into the chassis. Like so. I do put a bit of Loctite there because they do flex a lot across this part of the chassis. And if you don't put Loctite, you have to do them up really, really tight to secure them. So by using Loctite, you know that they're not going to rattle loose. This one, like so. Get it located in the chassis, click. Tighten it up. And again, being HB, of course, it's got ball raced steering. So I'll go down and put those on, put the bearings on. Don't need to put anything else. Off it is. Perfect, we'll get this on. Get it all nicely located. Then we can go in for the next bag. And we've got the silky smooth steering, which is super, super strong. No bearings here, that's a bush, alloy bush straight into the plastic, which is locked into this alloy arm, the Ackerman arm. Really good. Simple things done well are often the best. Another bag of goodies. Here we go. So for the past 30 odd minutes we've actually achieved a fair lot. We've got the front end on, the sway bar done. Here we go. I'm going to locate this nut into this cross member. If I can't get it in straight, I can use the Allen key to act as a guide. And then once it's there or thereabouts, can press it down with my shock tool, hopefully. Like so. And that's not going to fall out in a hurry. Dropping my tools off the bench nearly. Okay, so we've got a, looking at the instructions, 4x10, 3x12 button head screw into the chassis brace. Let's make sure I've got the chassis brace in the right way. There's a good chance that I haven't. Get the top nut in, here we go. That's sitting better. I don't know why I'm making it difficult for myself. Can do this one up over here. Now the chassis brace is not something I'm going to do up tight right now. I'm going to tighten it up and then loosen it off, just making sure that I can get everything pulled down on the chassis nice and firm and square. Like so. Now this one here does not need any Loctite because it's going into plastic. However, I will put Loctite on the steering screws into the steering posts, just because I know the flex that these cars put up with can be a really nice touch. It's only an M3 screw. Wind it up. Again, I'm not going to be torquing it all down now because I just want to make sure that I can pull it down nicely. A little bit more. Where did I put my, here it is, my XTR blue Loctite. Put a little bit on these ones, these big M4 screws, top and bottom. Now you don't want to flood it with Loctite because it'll go into the bearing space. The last thing I want to do is put Loctite in our bearings. Perfect. Get this front one done up. Get these front ones pulled down nicely, like so, making sure that the steering's remaining nice and smooth. Perfect, no binding. Then we could go ahead and put the last piece of the brace in underneath.